Peace, YouTube. This is FleurBrun coming to you today to have another discussion. Discussion. So check on in. I wanted to kind of get in the conversation about the gentleman who did the shooting. So I thought it was really poignant to have this discussion. I'm sorry, I look a little messy. Uh, it's been a interesting day. So anyway, I'll wait until a couple people check in. Usually it's weird how it checks in. You know, they've my lives have gone crazy since last night talking about nature knots. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone can actually check in here. So check on in. Um, I just want to say before I start this video that I really extend my deepest sympathies and to the parents who lost their children. You know, I saw what looked like a mother having a nervous breakdown when it came to her daughter actually being one of the ones that were murdered. She was yelling at Trump, saying, "Trump, what are you doing to protect our children?" Like she had totally lost her sense of self, and I got it as a mother. I got it. So I can't even criticize that. You know, I don't want to go around saying that's a false flag, because I saw a real mother showing real emotions, and it was interesting that how that showed up and how she was coming for President Trump. So you know, I got it when she stated it out loud, and you know, I really was motivated to make the video on this being. So let's get it in. So we had a shooting in Parkland, Florida, which is Broward County. I personally, isn't it Broward? I think it's Broward County. Um, and it was what I know to be something that wasn't necessarily preempted. And the young man who did it, um, who killed and murdered these people. Folks. I'm sorry, hold on. I'm sorry. I know I'm a little off today because I was watching some videos on it. Again, the mother who spoke about the murder of her. Sorry, let me get comfortable. The murder of her daughter. It kind of shook me up a little bit. So I'm a little, even though I was going to go live, I just saw the video preempt to this. And, you know, like I said, as a parent, you see something like that, and you see a mother who's just lost her child, her daughter. I think the daughter was 14 years old. And the mother just kind of went ballistic live, and it was hard to watch that. So for that reason, you know, I really wanted to make this video talking about it. So I made sure I put a picture of the picture that I took of the gentleman who did the shooting, Cruz, on the thumbnail of this video, this live video. So you can see the eyes that have the slits in it that we saw on Cypher. Big up to Cypher. I posted that in Cypher, and you know, you can detail that either he has what I deem to be a demonic overlay or a reptilian overlay, which could be connected to him via through the womb, transferred to him via the womb when he was born, or being so low field and behavior that he has allowed himself to be incepted by what we consider to be some sort of demonic, or, you know, some people will say demonic, some people will say reptilian. Sometimes it can be one and the same, sometimes it's not. It can be totally different. Being said, you know, you see in that picture, you see his eyes. Apparently he has slits, and we know that he is either a hybrid of some sort, or he could very well be something that had an attachment. And previous to the shooting, he had stated that to the officers that he was being he was being provoked to the killing, to motivated to do the killing by some beings inside of his head. Only reason folks say false flag is there were at least 2 shooters, according to the student witnesses, not taking away from Cruz. FBA knew about him. Students said he was crazy. Okay, so you're saying that there might have been some other shooters. Now, thank you, Mind Over Matter. What's interesting about that is a lot of times when we hear these mass shootings, they always detail one person killing, but sometimes you'll hear maybe after the fact that there were other people involved, and that's why last night, even during the live video that got cut off, that I was trying to re-up all night long. I apologize for last night's live stream. It was my fault. I did something a little naughty. But even if it was considered a false flag, this one, I won't say that out loud that it was a false flag, based on the fact that we know that we know parents who actually lost their children. So when it becomes close, false flags do include real deaths. Let's state that as well. So I can't say yay or nay that it's false flag. I'm speaking to what this being is, what his motivation stated by himself, and what I think him to be as far as species wise, based on the fact that when I did a close-up of his picture, I noticed that he had slits in his eyes. Again, I put that in the thumbnail. And also I noticed that he had ears that were a little protruded, which is a denotion of sometimes, sometimes genetic abnormalities show up with beings that are hybrid. And, personally, with the ears and the eyes, I denote that he is of another species, whether it's an overlay, like I said, a reptilian or demonic overlay, something attached to him from birth or afterwards based on low field activity, meaning that doing killing animals, having very deprived, low field psychological thoughts and patterns that will allow for susceptibility in your auric field to be susceptible to infiltration by other entities via demonic attachments, reptilian attachments, whatever, gray overlays. We've got a host of beings that will attach to low field beings, displaying very low field behavior. And what I know is him saying that he heard voices previously. We've heard that quite a bit of times, where he could be very much an MK Ultra a candidate, where he was actually triggered and activated based on some technology that kind of like a sleeper cell, like triggered, and all of a sudden, just like the guy who did the remember the guy was driving those Ubers, and he said he saw the Uber sign and it just bam, it just went into his mind, and in the Uber symbol that showed up, he was a driver. He was one of the people, the Uber drivers. Remember, he said that he saw the Uber signature show up on his phone, and all of a sudden it was in his head telling him to kill some of the passengers, and that's what he did. It's kind of like that. So we could also denote the fact that he could have been triggered or activated based on the MK Ultra programming that we talked about, the Super Soldier program, where they have a lot of these beings, especially those who are adopted, those who are in the foster care system, utilized in some of these labs as guinea pigs, and they are, incepted with chips that kind of bypass their cerebral cortex and kind of get in their subliminal pathways, allowing for transmission and also allowing for infiltration of their minds, thoughts, and patterns. Let's see, deep stuff. Yeah, we have a couple things going on with him. So, the fact of the matter is, I know that his facial features that are showing up with the reptilian eyes, that's a sign of infiltration. And again, I don't denote that he may be biologically some sort of hybrid. He could have an overlay. And the fact of the matter is that we don't even know if he's connected to any satanic sects, because this has Satanism all over it. Why? It's because he also did the murder on Valentine's Day. And usually we know Valentine's Day is associated with occult rituals. And because it is an occultist day, I don't know if you've ever saw the movie Valentine's Day Massacre. Many of you who are a certain age remember that horror show back in the days. A lot of times the occultists will do things on holidays as an occult ritual. Especially sacrifices. And not all sacrifices are localized sacrifices, meaning one or two animals or what have you. Usually more higher sects of satanic occultists will do bigger more profound sacrifices of major people, celebrities, what have you, or a mass amount of people with mass shootings. So, and remember, you don't hear, like, it's different with gang members or with, like with other members of other organizations like Al Qaeda, whatever they call it, what they consider to be terrorist groups. They will usually claim the fame for such a shooting. This is different when it comes to the occult. The cult is called hidden for a reason, meaning that he may be part of a Satanist or a witch sect, a cult sect, but they won't come outward and give him props. They do that on the back lay. So anybody he's connected to, if it's a satanic sect, you won't see them lay claim to him, but they will celebrate on the back lay, unbeknown to you, and they will give him credence and credit all day for what he's done. He feels like he'll be awarded by the demonic beings attached to that group. So it smells like Satanism here. It smells like it. It smells like reptilian DNA mixed with occultism. That's what it smells like. And it's a shame because we take in the fact and to make this being a little more normal. And okay, let me kind of digress a little bit. What's interesting with this shooting, which is another shooting that's happened once again in the Matrix, this has become a pattern now over the last 6 to 7 years. If you've not noticed, not that shootings have not happened, but for the last 6 or 7 years, have you noticed a pattern around certain times of years that during these particular holidays that we're seeing a great amount of shootings perpetually around this time? What's interesting with this is how some are choosing to label this young man. Now, mind you, I'm a mother. Okay, so I always am empathetic towards children, young people who are suffering from sometimes depression, also maybe neglected. We also know this young man was adopted. His adopted mother just died, I believe, in November. His father had died previous to that, his adopted father, and he was living with a friend in a trailer. I think a friend of the family, I believe. Don't quote me on this. I think so. Also, I believe he was also diagnosed with some sort of psychosis that he was supposedly supposed to be medicated for. Also, we have someone who just apparently had lost their girlfriend. The girlfriend broke up with him and was seeing another boy like almost directly after. So he had a couple of traumatic experiences that were occurring back to back to back that kind of led him down the deeper hole of depression that obviously was an onset along with a host of other things that we talk about, maybe Satanist activities, maybe it's all relative. Everything's all interrelated. So, when you're a Satanist and you're doing deep, dark things as far as killing animals, doing blood sacrifices, you know that your life will show up in the same depraved way. So, if your girlfriend treats you like crap and she just disperses of you, it's kind of like the behavior you're doing on the back leg. But I noticed that the language, I watched Alex Jones today. And, what I find so interesting with him is that he's so far up Trump's behind. It is so notable the type of banter and racially piloted, politically incited language this man is using. I remember Alex Jones. See, this is what I'm saying with a lot of these so-called whistleblowers. They all start off totally different. He started off as someone who was blowing spots, who was talking about the government being inceptors, those who the government was the enemy, and now he's so pro-government. Now that his what is this guy's name? Let me see. I was listening to this gentleman today. Let me give you his name because he really disgusted me. Let's do this. Where's his name? Sorry, family night. Let's get his name. Okay, this gentleman's name is Owen Schroyer. He's from InfoWars. Owen Schroyer, he's absolutely a depraved, self-righteous, political insider. And it's interesting now that Obama is not president, how all of a sudden before, when that's how people have racial issues, complexionism issues, because it's so interesting that now that President President Obama is no longer president, and now it's Trump, they have pictures of themselves behind the White House, in front of the White House. They have um, they have pictures of themselves in front of the flag, the American flag. But when a brown president was in power, they avoided the flag and pictures of themselves in anything that was monumentally connected to the government. So interesting how pro-government they are now that Trump is leader in leadership, but they were so anti-government when a man who was seemingly of color. Remember, I won't say Barack Obama was he was a brown man, but his mother was part of the crew. She came from the Queen's bloodline. She was a lunar mother. He came from the womb of a lunar. Number one, he was raised by lunars. Number two, and he came from the bloodline of the Draconians. It's amazing to me that they call him a black man when on the fact that he had everything that was quite lunar, other than his obviously tan skin and his choice of choosing a more melanin dominant female. Anyway, so I digress. Okay, so it's interesting how they call this gentleman, they call him psychologically off, but if he was a brown man, if he was a tan man, if he was anything less than very fair skin, they would have quickly called him a terrorist. They would have quickly linked him to Al Qaeda. They would have quickly linked him to some sort of terrorist group, linked to all kinds of Middle Eastern or Islamic, terrorists. If he was anything other than very fair skinned and European, I find it so interesting that they don't even see the racial undertone of their language and their way that they will describe a person based on, there's so much more empathy towards this young man, to be honest. But I'm a mother. I'm empathetic. If he was brown, I'd be empathetic because he's a young man and he's obviously been harmed and neglected, and he comes from such a disdainful background. I'm a mother. I could care less if you're lunar or brown. I have empathy for children. So I see this in a way different way. But it's interesting how to see these political, provocateurs really utilizing this and using different verbal language to describe when a male is apparently lunar, white, European, as opposed if he had a little tan skin, maybe a Spanish last name or some sort of last name that's not quite Smith or Blackman or something that's more Americanized or English. Really it's not Americanized because those names like Smith and Robinson and so on, those are English names from England, because there's no European that's originally from the United States of America. Let's just keep it real. Everybody has been migrated here. So everyone to a certain degree is an illegal, especially those who came as pilgrims and helped to murder the indigenous here. So those are illegals as well. I don't care what they call themselves today, as nationalists or as Americans, but they are all illegals. The only original people here are the indigenous, and they are quite legal, including the Mexicano, which are legal Americans because their ancestors were here anyway. It's interesting that Trump wants to build a wall around the same people who actually walk these lands. Do you listen to the hypocrisy? It's crazy. He wants to build a wall to bound out people that were walking these lands previous to any European incepting or any colonization. I'm digressing. I think it's lunacy when I'm watching InfoWars, who used to be, Alex Jones was like the one you went to be honest, especially in the whistleblowing community. We went to Alex Jones to blow spots, talk about all the infiltration of the government. But he is really so far up Trump's behind. I guess Trump is promoting him and paying for him, because I noticed that Trump also gives him a big up every once in a while on his tweets. So it seems like he's being paid, and he is an agent now for the government, as he is being paid by, this is my own opinion, Trump. And I see one of his cronies, this clown, I have to say his name, Owen Schroer, he was reading a teleprompter and reading a teleprompter, and it looks like a conditioned biobot himself, talking about this situation less than from an objective point of view. Okay, so okay, let's go back to this. We have a young man who steps on the campus of a school, which has happened how we had what is it, Sand Lake, what is it, what's that other shooting place in Connecticut? Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook. You've had several other shootings. You had the club here in Florida. You had a couple other places. Now, I find it interesting that you have quote unquote the far left talking about how this we should be getting gun control, making sure there's no guns, access to guns. And then we had the far right saying that you need arms all day. But it's interesting that the far right are so far removed from life and realistic, interaction in the matrix. And the far left is so rigid, not so rigid, but really loose in how they don't want to create laws that would disallow most people from the ability to gain arms that could potentially harm people. Now, you know how I feel about arms. I think when I talk to my European sea stars in Holland, in Denmark, in France, in Germany, and also in England, the one thing that they do denote is that they do admire the fact that here in the United States, let me not be disrespectful, I misspoke, the United States of America, we have the right to bear arms. This is where I'm okay with that. Why? Is because when anything pops off, which you see it's popping off all over the place, I think it's only appropriate that if you start kicking off with bullets, then you should be met with the same bullets you kicking off with. I think it's only fair and balanced to have the same force that could be taken upon you to do harm to you, to be able to defend you as well. Okay, so I'm not big on people telling you what you can have, what you can't do. I think, again, guns don't hurt people. People hurt people. Okay, so you could take your car and drive your car beautifully, but if you're a maniac, you could take your car and kill, like you saw in France. They mowed over a whole lot of people. So it's just based on the psychology behind the person. Now, they're talking about the AR-15 that this gentleman got. Now, for those of you who have arms, who are gun carriers, who are part of the Rifle Society, you know, as many of us go to gun shows, you can purchase any kind of gun, assault or otherwise, off the books, underneath the table. And the majority of people going to gun shows do not look like me. Okay, so if there's any issue to illegal guns, now there's illegal guns in the drug game, in the obviously in the, the gang sect, obviously. But do you know where guns come from? Because I know somebody who actually makes guns, custom guns. Big up to the homie who makes custom. I actually know someone who makes custom guns, and they're not from this country, and they're allotted to be here. And a lot of the wealthy go to him to make these beautiful. I know a man who can make guns blinged out with pink diamonds. Yeah, I actually do. I know some of the oddest people. Yeah, he actually makes assault weapons. He can make any weapon, and he makes it, and he gets his material from abroad. And the United States has them here, and it's legal. And many of the very well-off have guns like that. So it's interesting that they have such an issue with guns, but many people have guns, and it's not so much an issue when you have money. It's only an issue when you are poor. Do you understand what I mean? Okay, so let's get back to this. I go all over the place. I hate going on tangents. My mind works like I'm a Sagittarius all day. I go all over the place. So it's interesting that this young man had an AR-15, which he got access to. Why I'm telling you this story about going to gun shows, because it's not as uncommon as people think. You can get guns. And this is why I'm saying whether they make laws to keep people from guns or make laws to make it easier, it doesn't matter, because the type of gun that he had was illegal anyway. And I know I've heard and seen many people who have that kind of gun who are wealthy, and it's fine, and no one's checking them, and people know that they have them. So that's what I'm saying. We got to be careful looking at the banter out here, political banter that's going back and forth. This is not true. because it only matters in the placement that you are. So if you're very wealthy, you get away with most things, including murder. Okay, and when this young man came from a very you know, limited resource placement. And obviously, that's why most people would have an issue with how this went down. And obviously, he murdered 17 young people. If you saw the pictures of the young people, it would, as a parent, that's why I say I have to give my heart out to give my condolences out to the parents, because you know, when you see the pictures of the young people, it's not like adults, and I'm not saying it makes it better if it's adults, but when you see young people and their pictures, it's heartbreaking. And you could just imagine, like the mother who was yelling at the top of her lungs at Trump. You could just imagine the amount of agony that a lot of these parents are going through. So where do we start and where do we end this conversation? We have these beings. Now, you know, I'm going to go all kinds of ET rogue on you right now. I've talked about this before. No one believed me. Let's go back to my video. Now, I don't like to give myself credit, okay? Especially when it comes to something like this. Oh, sorry. That's my mate. That's his ringtone. He knows I'm talking all kinds of smack. I just lost my concentration. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to talk about what's related to this gentleman and how this went. If you look at my video a little while ago, and remember I talked about I met a reptilian, and and I was telling you that they have an infestation of low-field reptilians in limited urban and trailer park environments that are there, and they're causing tyranny. Remember, I made that video. I said not only in urban, which are considered to be brown people, but with lunars as well, that there were these low frequency reptilians that are here, that are being, personally, I think they're being bred. Personally, I think they're being bred, or they're not being denied the access to being perpetuated, being bred. And that they have created havoc in the way that they are fielding or driving the lower demographics of society, whether it be drive-by shootings and low-field activity, whether it be these satanic low-field sex. Because a lot of times you don't realize, people talk about Satanism because they look at the eyes wide shut with, you know, like Tom Cruise, and they kind of romanticize what some of the occultism looks like. And that's a sect of the occultism, but that's not at the major part.